What's up, YouTube? We're about to watch a interview with Kirsten Welker and Scott Bessent. Scott Bessent is the Treasury Secretary of the Trump administration, and he is one person that I think that people don't like to interview because he doesn't get caught up in the gotcha. He just stays focused on the bottom line, which is why President Trump brought him in and made him the Treasury Secretary. He's very cut and dry, very to the point, and this throws off a lot of, let's say, so-called journalists. Kirsten Welker is supposed to be a journalist, but you can tell she hadn't studied. She doesn't know what Treasury Secretary Bessent knows. So when she throws out these ambivalent questions about the market as if she knows about the market on a day-to-day basis or even studies the market for that, even to that level, she's going to pretend to understand. And when he responds to her question, she doesn't know where to go, but she goes on to the next question. Let's take a look.
And joining me now is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Secretary Bessent, welcome back to Meet the Press.
It's good to see you.
It's great to have you back after a very big week. Let's start with the market reaction to President Trump's announcement of his tariffs. As I just laid out at the top of the program, the markets lost more than $6 trillion in value. Was this disruption always part of the plan, Mr. Secretary?
Look, the markets are organic. The animals, and you never know what the reaction is going to be. One thing that I can tell you as the Treasury Secretary, what I've been very impressed with is the market infrastructure, that we had record volume on Friday, and everything is working very smoothly, so the American people can be very take great comfort in that. And in terms of the market reaction, look, we get these short-term market reactions from time to time. The market consistently underestimates Donald Trump. I remember that in 2016, the night President Trump won, the market crashed. And it turned out he was going to be the most pro-business president in over a century, maybe in the history of the country. And we went on to very high after inflation returns for the next 4 years.
Well, but this was the biggest two-day crash since the pandemic. The president on Saturday urging people, quote, to hang tough, saying it won't be easy. And I guess the big question on people's minds, Mr. Secretary, how difficult is it going to be? And how long are Americans going to have to hang tough?
I've been observing Kirsten for a while. I don't say for a while, for as long as I've been watching her. And when she repeats the question, she didn't get the answer she thinks she deserves, or she doesn't think that the person she's asking the question to can legitimately or comprehensively answer the question. So she asks him again, is this, and she reminds him that this was the biggest crash since whenever. This lady only knows what she studies for that night to prepare for this interview, and that's the limitations of her complete and thorough or lack of understanding of the market. Keep that in mind as you hear her question Scott Bessent, who is probably a treasure trove of information in terms of markets and crashes. And just like he mentioned, he said, I remember in 2016 when the market crashed when President won the election. And then he bounced back with the biggest returns in the market that it had ever seen. And then she goes back to the question again because they don't want to highlight President Trump in anything, in any capacity. They have sought to dehumanize this man from the very beginning. Since he came down the escalator, mainstream liberal media, legacy/state-sponsored media, has sought vehemently to dehumanize this man from that day forward. It's always going to be something about President Trump in the news, whether it's true or not. They manufacture stories about this man and report it to you as if it's true. But then you take the Biden administration, a man who, on his way out of the door, in the last moments of his presidency, pardoned his entire family. His entire family. And the media, they tried to pretend as if they were disappointed by that, but they weren't, because they what? Covered for him the entire 4 years. Let's go back to Scott Bessent.
But it's just in terms of the uncertainty, I think, that people are feeling and seeing. And President Trump saying he wants people to hang tough, acknowledging there's going to be what he has described as a short period of pain. Can you help provide some clarity for folks? How long will this period of uncertainty be? Are we talking about weeks? Are we talking about months? Are we talking about years?
Again, this is an adjustment process. We saw with President Reagan when he brought down the great inflation and we got past the Carter malaise, that there was some choppiness at that time, but he held the course, and we're going to hold the course. And this has been years in the building, years in the making. This unsustainable system, our trading partners have taken advantage of us. We can see that through the large surpluses. We can see this through the large budget deficits. And also, Kristen, this is a national security problem, which we saw during COVID. We saw during COVID that optimal supply chains are not resilient. And what I could say is the only good outcome from COVID is it was a beta test for what would happen if our supply chains got broken. And President Trump has decided that we cannot be at risk like that for our crucial medicines, for semiconductors, for shipping. And we are going to move forward so the American people can know that they are going to have a more secure future.
And yet, President Trump promised that he was going to improve the economy starting on day one. He said prices are going to come down. More than 160 million Americans, Mr. Secretary, as you know, are invested in the market. Many of them have spent their lives saving for their retirement. What is your message to Americans who want to retire right now and who've just seen their lifetime savings drop significantly?
Kirsten Welker can be so intellectually disingenuous, it is palpable. Now she's going to act like she understands the plight of normal everyday Americans, like she says, who've seen their savings drop significantly. You ask any average citizen what happened to their 401k from the first Trump presidency to the end of the Trump presidency to the beginning of the Biden administration to the end of the Biden administration. Did their 401ks go up under Biden, or did they go down under Biden? But where was Kirsten Welker asking normal people that question then? They didn't want to portray the Biden administration in any negative light that would have given support to the Trump candidacy for president. Keep that in mind. Even today, they're doubling down on their disdain for this man who's only trying to help the American people. Kirsten Welker talks about the American people as if she has an understanding of their plight. But obviously, she has no clue. You can see when Scott Bessent went into the history of the markets, Kirsten Welker started writing on her pad as if she was taking notes or something, like she knew what he was talking about. That's why she had to go back to this question again, because, again, she's trying to trip him up. But this man is too seasoned for that. He knows what he's talking about. That's why Trump made him the Treasury Secretary of his administration. This man don't play. Back to Kirsten and Scott.
Well, Kristen, I think that's a false narrative. Americans who want to retire right now, the Americans who have put away for years in their savings accounts, I think they don't look at the day-to-day fluctuations of what's happening. And, in fact, most Americans don't have everything in the market. Most Americans in a 401k have what's called a 60-40 account. That 60 of 40 accounts, they are down 5 or 6% on the year. People have a long-term view. They have a program. That the reason the stock market is considered a good investment is because it's a long-term investment. If you look day to day, week to week, it's very risky. Over the long term, it's a good investment.
President Trump's tariffs are being described as the biggest tax hike on Americans in decades. They could cost the average household thousands of dollars. Republican Senator Ted Cruz had this to say. I'm going to play it, get your reaction on the other side.
Tariffs are a tax on consumers, and I'm not a fan of jacking up taxes on American consumers.
Do you acknowledge that President Trump's tariffs will cause prices to go up on a range of goods?
Well, Kristen, what I like is data. And if we look at data from President Trump's first term, and there's a big study that just came out from a group of economists, mostly at MIT, that showed that a 20% tariff on China led to a 0.7% tax or price level increase over 4 years. I think that's pretty good. If we can take in 20% in tariffs and it's a 0.7% increase. And Kristen, the little publicized story this week, everyone wants to look at the stock market going down. You know what else went down? Oil prices went down almost 15% in 2 days, which impacts working Americans much more than the stock market does. Interest rates hit their low for the year, so I'm expecting the mortgage applications to pick up.
I'm going to stop jumping in like this, but I had to get this dig in. She wasn't ready for that. Again, I tell you, this man don't play. This man does not play. He knows what he's talking about. Kirsten Welker is not prepared for this interview. Even if she had stayed up all night, she still wouldn't be prepared because this man has such a wealth of experience with the market. And like he says, data. He looks at data. They're showing us the immediate market reaction, and right away, they think it's a failure. You know why? Because it's Trump. If this were the Biden administration, they would be radio silent.
Well, just to be very clear, though, I mean, during President Trump's first terms, the cost to Americans was nearly $80 billion in new taxes due to his tariffs. Prices did go up on everything from washing machines to tires.
Well, no. But let's go back. The aggregate number was 0.7, so we can discern the individual things. Also, households saw real net wages go up. So if wages go up faster than prices, which is not what happened over the past 4 years, that's why the bottom 50% got eviscerated.
Well, let me ask you about your view, because last January you wrote that, quote, tariffs are inflationary. The Fed chair said the same thing on Friday, that tariffs announced this week cause higher inflation. Have you expressed any concerns to President Trump directly that his tariff policy could be inflationary?
No, what I've said is tariffs are a one-time price adjustment. So there's a big difference between insipid endemic inflation within the system and consistent price level increases and a one-time adjustment. But the other thing that we're doing is we are raising wages for working Americans. We're bringing down regulation. So there are estimates that regulations have cost the average household about $8,000, that when we get this tax bill through, then we will make the tax levels permanent. And again, the drop in the energy prices, the drop in interest cost, I think real after-tax wages are going to go up for Americans, and that's what's important.
I don't want to belabor the point, but I think we get the message here. We see the game plan from MSDNC, CNN, mainstream liberal media, state-sponsored, legacy/state-sponsored media. Whatever Trump says, they're going to go the opposite. If Trump says up, the media is going to say down. If Trump says right, the media is going to say left. It's going to be back and forth like a tennis match. Back and forth. So I'm not going to be like, again, I don't want to belabor the point, but I think you got it, people. And I want you to pay attention as we move forward in this year, because every accomplishment the Trump administration makes, and they're going to make many, there is going to be downplayed by lamestream media. Kirsten Welker, Caitlin Collins, they're going to try and find something to say about it that's negative. They're not going to buy in because they don't want to humanize the president of the United States. They would rather cheer for China. They would rather see these tariffs fail. They would rather see Trump fail than American people succeed. That's all I have for you right now. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. And let me know what you think. You all have a blessed day. I'm out.